Hey everyone, this is Steve Wiideman with Unbottleneck, the podcast that takes you through common problems that marketers have. Digital marketers are challenged with trying to get the most traffic to their website, and our job is to help give you ideas, tips, strategies from the experts in the industry. With me today is Brian Wallace, who is absolutely incredible at digital marketing and works for a group called NowSourcing. And NowSourcing helps make the world's ideas simple, visual, and influential. He helped a basketball player get a $64 million contract, and he became the sixth highest paid player in the NBA. And we'll share a link to that story later, and we definitely have to talk about that. Now Sourcing has been ranked by ratings agencies as one of the top 5 content marketing agencies in the world out of 15,000 plus agencies, with clients that range from Adobe to Twitter. Twitter, what's Twitter, right? Who doesn't use that? So Brian, thanks so much for joining us today, and excited to talk to you about some pretty exciting topics. I definitely want to talk about Clubhouse today because you've been writing about that recently, and I've got a million questions for you. And we definitely want to talk about the role of design and multimedia in digital marketing and how you incorporate that and how it might benefit other parts of marketing like SEO. So welcome to the show.
Absolutely, Steve. You're kidding. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Always a pleasure. It's just like us catching up over some coffee and everybody else is tuning on in.
Exactly. Well, let's jump in. First I want to hear about this story about the basketball player. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure can. So it's such a weird thing. Like a lot of marketers, when you ask them, it's like, what have you done for a living? And they're like, well, I got some clout and I got a couple of people to like things on Facebook and did some ads and things came up in SEO and all that kind of stuff. Most people don't say something like, well, we got a basketball player contract. So as I try to help explain it for people, for those of you, I'm sure most of your listeners out there at some point have either read the book or watched the movie starring Brad Pitt. And of course, I'm talking about Moneyball, which is all about sports analytics, sabermetrics, and all of that. So not to kill the entire plot of the movie for you, but it's like this. Baseball used to just be a dinosaur, and baseball scouts for 150 years looked at a player, and if they held the bat weird, or if they pitched the ball weird, or if they were too old or too fat, they were outcasts and they were terrible, right? But the players that looked the part, that weren't necessarily good, got the ticket in. So people were making bad decisions because they were subjective to the look and the appearance, as opposed to being objective to what they should have been looking at, which was the stats.
Capabilities. Yeah.
Right. So when people started to break it down to its component parts, they're like, all right, to win the whole thing, aka the World Series, we have to go win games. To win games, we have to win a number of runs, people rounding the bases and getting to home plate, and not give up as many runs. So when they actually thought about it, they brought it down basically to like a single stat of on-base percentage. I don't want to get all like weird, geeky baseball related, but you had teams that were terrible started to win everything. You even had the Boston Red Sox, who hadn't won for decades and decades, as long as you and I have been alive, and then some, started winning the World Series. And then everybody started having a data science department. So why am I talking about baseball? Because baseball was the first, and it was the exemplar to trickle into the other sports, one of which was basketball. Basketball was a little slower to adopt. And I think sometimes basketball is a lot more, if you think about just playing basketball, the term one-on-one comes out, right? So baseball, I think, is usually thought about more as a team effort as opposed to basketball, which is kind of not true because there's a Netflix special now talking all about the Bulls, and they changed the game by thinking about the team effort. But once upon a time, the agent for this particular sports player said, hey, can you go get him a contract? And we're like, I don't know. I mean, we can try, right? And lo and behold, we were able to tell the story that there was a great paradigm shift coming to basketball, much as there was to baseball. We broke it down into the stats and the numbers, and we weaved in the story of the emotion and the heart and what a team player he was. Yeah. And he was only 22 and a half at the time, and very underplayed, very unknown, not getting his fair share of clock time and all of that. But then, because we told the story so well and simplified it and made it visual and got influence. Now, influence, by the way, is a bad word in a lot of circles. A lot of people hear the word influencer, but that
Right.
doesn't mean to get stranded on a desert island with half a cheese sandwich. The word not influencer, the word is influential.
Okay.
Influential is good people with talent helping other good people achieve things that are great. So in this case, our talents combined with the athletic talents of the player, we were
Mhm.
able to make it happen. So we took that idea, we visualized it, we got it all over the place in the media, and then people started talking about it in all sorts of sports threads, and then sportscasters started talking about it, and major media was covering it. And by the time the trade deadline, which if you don't follow sports, that means this is the moment where you have to decide, are you going to keep the player, are you going to trade the player, are you going to sign the contract? He was able to get his first huge contract of 64 million, and then later on he parlayed that into a $180 million contract, and now I believe he's the sixth highest paid player ever in like all of the NBA. So it's kind of crazy.
That's unbelievable. Like a $64 million contract just by doing content marketing, you know.
Yep, you've
So
heard of
we're
the
we're gonna
$64
we're gonna
million
definitely
question, right? So here it is.
that's unbelievable, and that I'm sure he appreciated it. I'm sure you got some sort of autographs or kudos or something for such a incredible success.
His dad likes me a lot.
So I'm gonna dive into some questions. We put some questions together about what we thought would be really interesting to those people who are listening. First question is, and some of the things that you've written. One of them is this idea of the value proposition. In fact, it's on your website. Could you walk listeners through your take on how businesses describe what they do in terms of value proposition?
Yeah, so I have a fundamental belief that most people don't know how to describe themselves. Part
Mm,
of it is they don't know how to simplify it. Part of it is maybe they don't like talking about themselves, but there's a difference between ego, which is kind of rooted in evil, and clarity. If nobody knows what you do, it's not beating your chest like what you're talking about me and our accomplishments. This isn't me bragging. Like Will Rogers says, if you've done it, it's not bragging, right? So I think rather than over explain things, like you're an SEO, Steve, right?
mm,
So I think if you bore people to tears with SEO acronyms, like you're going to start in on a conversation about EAT and core this and that, and it's like, what are you even talking, are you speaking English anymore, what is going on here, right?
you
So
like my
people have
students?
a
Yeah.
habit people have a habit of talking over people in a way that is not received, right? So people don't bother to put in the work to entertain and educate people or edutain people, right? You see all these smart marketers out there on the internet.
Yeah.
One of the stats that you hear a lot is people have the attention span of a goldfish, 8 seconds. I don't know if that's insulting to people or goldfish or both, but I think it's insulting to people. People aren't stupid. People just have a better crap filter because of their brains and their technology than
Mhm.
I think a lot of marketers give them credit for. So rather
Yeah.
than insulting people and treating them like sheep, what if you gave them hope and value and
Mhm.
entertainment? Think about it. The same person who's not going to click on whoever's ad and stupid copy that's terrible or brain tone deaf, brain dead in the middle of
Mhm.
just stupid words, think about it. So people are clicking off of whatever ad, whatever content, but the same person with the same brain is going to watch, let's say, 3, 4 hours straight of Cobra Kai,
Right.
right? Or whatever show you like.
Yeah, we
So
did the whole season in a weekend, I think. So
yeah, of course you did. Who didn't? Right. It's incredible and it's addictive, just like Clubhouse, which we'll get into in a second. So I think that it's not it isn't that people are dumb or people don't have time. Like a lot of people, they're always like, oh, it has to be a 60-second video. It has to be everything has to be now and do it quick and all that, not to snap in your ear. But you get what I'm saying. I think it's just absurd. It's all about getting the permission because
Mhm.
rather than going stats first, rather than going expert explanation first, simplicity is the currency to get and permission for a longer interval with
Right.
whoever you're trying to get audience with.
That's interesting. We try to do something similar with some of our brands we'd work with on the SEO side of things. Uh,
Sure.
we wanted to we wanted to rank for casual shoes, but
Mhm.
what was it that the person searching for casual shoes really wanted? Right? Were they looking specifically just for a word to show up in a title tag that said casual shoes,
Oh,
or were they looking for comfortable shoes for work and walking? And we try to understand what the fundamental need was of the person who was performing the search, and we'd modify our titles and descriptions that would appear to try to to try to solve their problem, to try to actually provide the benefit less than just the search term, because we felt that was addressing what the real needs were, the intent of the user. And I think you're right. I think a lot of businesses do a good job of making themselves look great, but when a customer tries to interpret who they are and what they're doing, they might get the wrong impression. The first impression might be too big, too expensive, don't want to touch them, right?
Right.
Instead of it being, wow, these guys look really professional and they know exactly what I need, right?
Mm.
I can just tell they care about what it is I was actually looking for. Yeah, I'll go even one step deeper. Yeah, I wanted, comfortable shoes, but I didn't realize that I'd have less pain when I did that until somebody actually read it back to me somewhere.
Hmm.
Less pain and walk lighter or whatever. And so it's interesting when you think about that whole idea of not just talking industry, but talking specifically to the need of the user. So you're right. A lot of brands really don't do a good job of doing that. And we
Right.
speak our own language sometimes too. At Disney, we
Oh
sold
yeah.
passports, but people search for tickets, right? So yeah, it's kind of a different world.
Yeah, I think
Um,
a lot of digital, a lot of SEO, it's a limited view of understanding of the world and their intent. So I'm not
mhm,
here to knock SEOs or Google or whatever, but it's like it's good to know historically what people have wanted and what they presently want. But
yep,
Google is not precognitive. It doesn't necessarily know the context and it doesn't know what people are going to want next.
right,
So what you said is very telling. So it's nice to rank for a keyword or a key phrase, but
yep,
what is it about that key phrase in context with their life and understanding with how they want to interact with things, right?
exactly.
How do you rank for something that's a brand new industry that doesn't even exist? What if we
I
were
get that a lot.
skincare?
I've actually turned down clients simply because I was like, there's no demand for this. There's no keyword yet. There might be, in a few years, but you're so way ahead of what people are even thinking yet with this thing you created that there's just no volume for it right now. And we could do it, but you're just not going to get traffic. You're better doing more social ads and paid ads and things like that.
But
So,
I don't know about that answer, right? So how can you do ads if you don't know what words are with it?
oh, it
I
would
think
be display and audience types. It'd be,
that's
more,
fair.
yeah, display ads. Search, yeah, you're right. Search ads and organic search. Unless you have keywords, there's
It's me.
or
You're
now you
flying
can,
blind,
yeah,
right?
you could do more like affinity targeting and some things to try to see if you can introduce yourself to a new audience. But if somebody's searching for product X and you're showing them product Z, they don't have an immediate interest in it. If they do click that search result, it's going to
Right.
be an impulse more than anything. So I think the visuals and the in markets affinity and related audiences would probably be the best way to go if you were to do that.
Yeah.
And speaking of those, banners and display ads, one of our
Mhm.
questions actually had to do with, um, you know, basically, how do you see as the current evolving role of graphic design in general and multimedia in digital marketing, public relations, and all forms of inbound marketing?
Yeah, so I think as much as I was just talking about how things are the past and let's look at the future, instead of looking at the future, let's look at the past. There's a great book called Be Like Amazon, Even a Lemonade Stand Can Do It. And they talk
Okay.
all sorts of different things about Bezos and Amazon and all sorts of interesting strategy. Something that they talk about in the book that I find fascinating that I think about a lot. Somebody is asking Jeff Bezos a question that they're talking about in the book. And it says, I don't really understand why everybody asks me what's going to happen in the next 10 years. A question that I'm not asked a lot of times, but I should be asked is what's going to stay the same over the next 10 years? And when you
Yeah.
figure out what that is, then you can grow all sorts of things incredibly. So he
Yep.
says, I can't imagine a moment where people are going to be like, I don't want fast free delivery or a huge amount of selection or low prices. So by focusing on the things that matter and
Sure.
warehousing and shipping and I'm sure you see the airplanes and the trucks everywhere you go. Like Amazon's just
Yes.
running everything on the street and everything in the
Drones
air
on the way.
and
Yeah.
drones, and it's a whole new world. So I
Yep.
think that to answer this question of what's coming next, let's look at the unfortunate reality of what the web actually is.
Hmm.
So, as much as we're all looking about the bleeding edge, augmented reality, cool, amazing thing, and drones and 5G and every wearable, and it's going to interface, Elon Musk is going to have it like interfacing with our brain, and don't worry, everything will be fine. The internet sucks. The internet is not that sophisticated. So if we
Mhm.
go back a generation or two in time, at the dawn of like the whole dot-com boom in 1999, when I was just a spring chicken, just coming out of college a few years in,
Now
already
it's
in
just going in.
already in the digital space,
Mhm.
I remember that whole world fell over. Why? Back then, 7% of the United States had broadband internet. Seven, single digit. And what are we talking about broadband? You probably wouldn't even be able to stream Netflix. We also did not have smartphones, right?
Mhm.
We didn't have GPS on our phones. So we couldn't build anything. We couldn't have built Uber back then. We couldn't have built Netflix back then. We wouldn't have GPS data. We wouldn't have all these different technologies. So people have to understand the limitations of web servers and bandwidth and all of this is why, because a lot of people, it's like, really? You're still making infographics in the year 2021? And I say, do you understand that there are websites that you can barely even display images that run some of the most powerful websites in the world? So a lot
Right.
of stuff on the internet, sadly, is held together with bubble gum and scotch tape. So
Yeah.
we have to work with what works before we go crazy and think ahead into everything. That being said, about what you're saying about digital marketing, public relations, and SEO, I feel that we just turned 14 as an organization back in August, whatever month it is now, coronavirus. So I'm talking
Yes.
about August
Blur's
2020.
Day. It's Blur's Day, Brian.
Yeah, Blue Day. Thank you. I call it someday. People are like, Sunday? No, someday. That's what I mean. So yeah, that's funny that we both have our words for it. So I used to tell people that we kind of sit on the fence on the crosshairs of public relations and SEO. And up
Mhm.
to a few weeks ago, I just said, I can't talk like this anymore because it doesn't make sense. Because I like things that have to do with PR and I like things about SEO, but I'm kind of not either one of them. I'm my own weird thing. So let me explain. The media has a very interesting problem right now. Everybody's at home and all the page views are going skyrocketing. For those of you who are not watching video, that's me making a line graph going up with my hand. And a lot of their advertising revenue is going down because there's companies that are out of business or waiting and they don't really know and all that. So what do you do when you're growing like crazy and your money's going down? You cut the fat, right? Except you cut the bone. So they throw out a lot of their writers and all of that kind of stuff. So rather than saying that I'm sort of this weird PR, SEO, blah, 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 rather than overcomplicate your brain, basically, like, I am the media right now. So sometimes the media is like, what you have is awesome and we don't have time to do it. And yeah, here you go have a news column.
Mhm.
So I think that interjecting, that sounds like a threatening word, but being helpful to the media and the readers and the clientele is a special place of magic that is having a moment like I've never seen in the past.
Right.
So harnessing the power of what's worked into today and should continue to work along with some of the trends of what's happening in our modern world.
And images are part of that. I remember when we first met. It seems like it was probably 6 years ago now. But
Mhm.
you designed this unbelievably incredible infographic for, I think it was the New York city page for Sparefoot. I think it was Sparefoot. And
Yeah.
what was magical about watching it, I started to reverse engineer a little bit about what you were doing, and I saw this amazing infographic. You'd beaten the top brands for self storage in New York. You crushed them with one single page. And I remember talking to you, and you're like, "No, I'm not an SEO." But I looked at what you had done. You created this amazing image that was so helpful to users when they got to the page. You basically, by doing this on this page that was supposed to be more of a lower funnel sales type page,
Right.
turned it into both an upper funnel page and a lower funnel page, and it attracted links on its own. But then you were like the big bang. As soon as this thing went live, every single freaking place that you had a connection to knew about this page and were sharing it. Hey guys, I did this. We just did this really cool infographic. What do you think? And then I went to another group, and you were saying the same thing in a different way to a different audience. And some of those groups that we're jointly connected to, you were all over them and engaging with the people. But instead of just saying, "Hey, check out this page," you were sending messages that were, hey, I'm part of this group and I need your help. Please take a look at this. Not just,
Right.
hey, look at this and link to it. It was this magical thing that you did that just blew up everywhere that I could see. And I probably only saw about 5% of where you actually communicated. And in doing that, within a few months, that page had attracted a ton of links of its own. It ranked in the top of the search results, but you really didn't have to go out and say link to this page. You didn't have to do anything magical to the page to with keywords really to get it to rank. It just organically did
Right.
because you were so good at spreading the message and creating something that didn't even exist online. That was amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that trip down memory lane. Thank you for that. So let's look at it like this. So I
Yeah.
wield a special weapon on the internet. So if you imagine that I'm holding a sword or a lightsaber or whatever your weapon of choice is. So the PR person would go into battle with their weapon, and their weapon would be 5 paragraphs about stuff to a media list of 1,000 people that they don't know very well. And how would you
Right.
like to interview the CEO? And then they would get denied by a lot of it. Now, I don't mean to pick on the PR industry, but I'm just saying, like, let's just go through the journey of that. The SEO people would say, let's make a highly complex, keyword laden. We're going to check all the boxes and we're going to look for link opportunities and run it through a bunch of things. And somebody broke a link. Hey, I'm just trying to be your friend. Da, da, da. Oh, look, this thing's 5 years out of date. Right. So that might work
Link,
sometimes. The
link,
PR
link to
thing
mine
never
instead.
works.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Link to me instead. I'm just being your helpful friend. Clearly not an SEO at all. And
Yep.
again, I love both sides of the fence, but I like to play a game called influence. So if,
Mm,
again, you run through what I'm saying, simple, visual, and influential. So somebody who's an expert in the field loves it because it's a great way of looking at it. Somebody who's not an expert in the field is like, wow, I can totally understand
right.
XYZ 123. Visual, it's probably going to be one of the best looking things that they're looking at all day, and that is a little bit of a mind trick because
Yeah.
most people, they're going to fly through whatever content you're going to send them. So if it looks great, not only are they going to stop, but they're actually going to read. So the visual, which you think is a trick to not get people to read, is a trick to just get them to read. But it's also
Right.
not a trick, it's just helpful. And then is the influential. So I've made a lot of friends through my 25 plus years on the internet and almost 15 years running this business. So
Right.
people like me because they know that I'm good and I provide all sorts of value. If they never hire me, I
And
have a lot of
there's no reason brands can't do the same too, and that brands can build influence
everyone
by
do the
creating
media.
those direct relationships. Yeah.
Correct. Everyone should be the media. Everybody has wisdom to share, and everyone is a universe. Everybody has a lot of powerful circles around them. It's just that we are not cognizant of that power around us.
Right. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, next question for you, and that was, by the way, is amazing. And I've got a lot more stories we can tell about how
Oh
impactful
yeah.
unique
Thank you.
images are. For sure, we could probably do a whole topic just on images. But
We
let's
could.
let's cover definition basics. From the industry. What's your take on this popular question? And I know there's an SEO angle on it too. But
Yeah.
what is an infographic? In your opinion, I mean, lots of people, think, oh, infographics, this big, long, huge image that's 4 megabytes. That's going to take my page forever to load. In your view, and kind of just completely owning that industry, what is an infographic?
So everybody, again, starts at the middle and they don't understand why their projects fail.
Right.
So as you said in my little bio intro, we said that we
Your
now
$64 million
sourcing.
dollar intro, Brian. We
Right
gotta.
before, right before the 64 million, we said some powerful words that were all together. We
Right.
make ideas simple, visual, and influential. So most people skip the idea stage. They listen to their client
Hmm.
has a salesy, spammy message in mind, and then you're starting with something that sucks, and then you're making the bad idea simple, visual, and influential. Here's
Yeah.
what happens when you empower bad ideas: you make them shinier, but they don't reach the same level. The
Mm.
thing that people fail the most, and it's not necessarily keyword research, it's more interestingness level. So take a piece that we did that helped a place get acquired by GoDaddy, and it was all about how Amazon makes its money.
Okay.
Now, we could have started in the middle of the conversation and talked about third party sellers. The problem with that is it's not very interesting to most of the world. But how Amazon makes money, unless Amazon goes out of business, is going to be in style and cool. and I could
Mhm.
share that like it just came out yesterday instead of a few
Right.
years ago forever, right? Because it's such an interesting thing. I can't wait to hear what happens next. We did that a similar thing like that for WordStream back when Larry Kim was running it before he sold it to Gannett. All about how Google makes their money. Not here's a keyword tool, blah, blah, blah. No, invert that funnel. Why would you start by selling? Who are you going to win over with that? So
Right.
people have bad ideas, uninformed ideas, safe ideas, incremental ideas, too salesy. Otherwise, it's just going to look like an advertisement. So I think that is the biggest thing. You mentioned size. I don't understand why a file has to be 4 MB. Learn how
Right.
to do better optimization. So
Yep.
sometimes that can be achieved, and this isn't a whole design class, but sometimes that can be achieved through a JPEG file. Sometimes that can be through a PNG file. And there are
Hmm.
also more advanced photo files that have been innovated over the last decade or so, such as the WebP and the HEIC files.
Right.
Also, you can break it up.
In
So
fact, yeah, search engines recommend using the new file formats too. So it makes a lot of sense to do that. The problem is, I think a lot of businesses have their nephews, their cousins, or the same
right,
person who's been doing web
exactly.
development for 10 years, who's not as savvy with some of the newer technologies because they're set in their ways on how they do web
Mhm.
design and graphics. And I know for a fact whenever I bring up the term infographic and SEO, a lot of peers will cringe. Oh, Matt Cutts years ago said infographics aren't a great way to get links because all the links have the same patterns, and it's not a. But at the same time,
He
it's the
never
one thing we look
said,
at more than anything. And I don't read blog posts as much anymore because I just don't have the time or the energy, and it's just text after text after text and paragraphs. I
and
see
listen,
an image, and like you said, I immediately resonate with it.
if
Yeah.
you want to quote Google, what's
Mm.
Google's basic guideline for content? Make stuff that people like.
Yeah.
So,
Helpful.
like, if we're, yeah, I mean, I think Matt Cutts was basically saying bad infographics are bad, but you know what else? Bad blog posts
Infographics as a
are bad.
link building technique is bad. Infographics to provide great content that attract links is great.
Exactly. It's just a vehicle like anything else. So to damn it as a medium is just silly. Yes.
Right. Awesome. I love it. Well, let's run to the next question because I I love infographics. I'll have a billion more questions. So yeah, this is kind of a tough one with infographics. You'd mentioned file sizes and file types, special considerations for infographics, such as how they're presented on mobile devices. Is there a difference in how on how users respond to infographics if they're on mobile? I mean, do they have to pinch and zoom in, or are there ways to kind of work around that?
Sure. So I think pinch and zoom is great. And I think just the way that a person naturally scrolls is great. Because if you're doing a video, they're going to
Mhm.
scroll past your video. But if they're scrolling while you're doing an infographic, they're actually scrolling into your message. So that's one thing to think about. Also,
Okay.
and then I think let's go to the next question. There is a size limitation to my knowledge. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but I'm pretty sure uh, on iPhone and Safari, there's actually a size height limitation.
Okay.
So be careful not to go too high, or your graphic might not be displayed. So just always have size considerations in mind.
Interesting. I never knew that.
Yep.
What kind of software is involved? And when your team's putting together
Mhm.
information and production, what type of software has been helpful in helping you guys and your team to produce some of these amazing pieces of content?
Sure. So sometimes people are like, so you're a software platform. It's like, no, no, it's not template generated software.
Yeah.
So we exclusively use the Adobe Suite, and it depends on the nature of the projects. More often than not, it's Illustrator, which is
Hmm.
incredibly powerful. A lot of
Yeah.
people automatically think it's Photoshop, but Photoshop is usually a little bit more about photo manipulation. So we're pretty
Sure.
much an Illustrator only house.
Yeah, I always think about Photoshop is Photoshop, right? That's the way.
We
And
do integrate
Illustrator
a
is
lot of
great for graphics.
photography, but
Yeah,
you can actually do a lot of that in Illustrator. But sometimes that comes down to designers' specific preferences. But
sure.
if you ask me, Illustrator is the way to go all the way.
Yep. That's outstanding. You and I talked about a productivity thing that you've been trying to put into words. Tell everyone your theory about the chaos list.
Yes. So this is something that I am writing all of these notes furiously, and I kind of have an idea for a long form piece about it. But to my knowledge, this is the first time I've publicly talked about it, aside from just a
Okay.
couple of buddies in the
All
back.
right. Let's do it.
So I think that the world suffers from a lack of focus on the correct thing. It's not that they're not focused, it's that they're focused on the wrong stuff. So what I
Okay.
mean is like this. So a lot of people will automatically assume that they should outsource everything and then just, focus on their zone of genius, is what a lot of people would say, like the stuff that
Sure.
only you are good at. But the problem with this is, what you should have done before you give it to other people is cut 80% of the crap that nobody cares about. So I've
Mm.
been like declaring war on all sorts of internal processes and procedures right now. So
Okay.
I'm looking at every little step that we do in the customer journey. And it's like, if the end user, if the customer, if the media isn't looking at this, why are
Mhm.
we doing all this duplicate work? What is the point of just hiring a bunch of people
Yeah.
to just put band-aids on a dam? It doesn't make any damn sense. Get it?
Like
See what I did
content
there?
for the sake of content,
Yeah,
and like
we
we
always
have
do.
8 blogs a day.
Yeah, have you
Why?
ever heard of the story of the grandma with the meatloaf? So
No.
granddaughter is making meatloaf and she cuts the
Okay.
side off, both sides off, puts it in the oven. And her mom's standing there and she's like, Mom, why do we even do this? And she's like, honestly, honey, I don't even know. Let's go call grandma. So ring ring calls the nursing home. Grandma, why do we cut off the ends for the meatloaf? And she's like, hey, you dummies, I had a small oven. So I think a lot of people just inherit all of these clunky, stupid processes. And I think
Right.
certain things can be automated, but more important than that, I think certain things can be obliterated. So right now, I'm kind of on a whole warpath where I am trying to simultaneously build better ways of doing things and
Mhm.
also trying to conquer a bunch of stuff while the world is quiet. So I think there's a lot of moments throughout the day where we can do deep, uninterrupted work, whether that's research and development, whether that's learning more about Clubhouse, whether that's transformation internally in your process. So right now, for instance, I've been really obsessed with Airtable to completely redesign the way we do things instead of have a bunch of clunky Google Docs that
Yeah.
don't connect to each other and give you no insightful intel. Like,
Right.
pick a direction, right? One can change the future, one you're digging around in the dirt. Doesn't make any sense. So I feel, for me, I have been trying to get up earlier than ever to just kind of take on the morning. So I'm just like brain on fire lately, where I feel like I can't even sleep one more moment because I'm just so excited to make a big difference about it. And this is our year, COVID or
That's
not, this
amazing.
or that, doesn't matter.
So I see some pretty amazing infographics coming out of this too, as you as the world starts to come back together, and you've collected all of your thoughts and tests and experiments, and definitely excited to see what you publish, and I'm sure there's going to be some amazing stuff in there for sure.
Thank you. Yes.
So this is the one I know everyone's been waiting for, and you all hate us because we're supposed to talk about Clubhouse a little bit today, and I waited to the end to share this amazing, hopefully, updates on what we know about and what Brian has been doing. He wrote an article, actually a couple articles, about this social media app called Clubhouse.
Mhm.
Brian, can you give us a quick overview of the app and basically how it works, and maybe even a review of what your first public chat last month went?
Sure. So this is an app that is audio only, invite only, and iPhone only. Caveat: it does work on iPad and certain iMac on certain Macs.
Yep.
So I think why to do it is the most important thing for the few minutes we have left.
Yeah.
So I've been a social media practitioner for the last 15 years, and I've seen all these stupid social media networks come and go, and they all work on the 80/20 rule, or a
Yeah.
pyramid, where you've
Yep.
got the top, the 1%, that are the creators.
Hmm.
And then you've got the 99 bottom percent that consume. Maybe they copy, maybe they like, maybe they write a few comments, whatever, but they're not really the contributors. There's only a very small group of all of these platforms that are the stars that are making it happen by creating with their creative intelligence and all their wisdom in that. Okay. What Clubhouse has done that I've never seen in any other social app in the history of the social web is they somehow found a middle in that pyramid. Meaning, you can be a passive listener and just be listening to it in your car, almost like it's an interactive podcast, but just more like the podcast than the interactive. Then you could be an active listener. Then you could raise your hand. Then you could get on the stage. Then you could talk in a room. Then you could run a room. Then you could be a moderator. Or then you could have an entire club, which has a whole entity of rooms. I know I just went kind of fast, but you'll have some links to some of the
Sure.
things in there. But I think that is the reason why, and I'm looking at you, Steve, even if
Mhm.
you're an Android user, talking about whatever phone holy wars is not
Context
the
switch.
most important thing right now because it's having a moment. This is a company that went from like 15,000 users on the platform to at least 2 million weekly listeners. It's
Now,
crazy.
how does that compare to TikTok? Because you were following that pretty heavily last year when we were talking about it too.
Yeah, so I never super got into TikTok, but I feel like TikTok, people don't like video. Some
Yeah.
people like video, but we all have our moments where we're like, you know what? I don't really feel like having the camera on. I'm not all dressed up. My hair's not like this.
95% of my students in the classes I teach, Brian, do not want to be on video.
Yeah,
And
Zoom fatigue.
I thought it was the opposite. I thought everyone would want to be on video because
No,
that's
not in the
the new
least.
world.
Right. So this has beautiful access. And I
Mhm.
happen to have an interesting voice. So like this is my moment to shine. Like I have the blonde supermodel look of voice, right? So like I
Yeah.
know I'm like just a normal looking guy or whatever, but
Yeah.
voice, vocal intonation is so much more important than a lot of overdoing it on all these other things. Who cares about your lighting and this and that? I'm not picking on you, Steve. I know you love video and all that. And I love video too, but there's moments when we don't. And this just creates such an interesting ecosystem that levels that playing field. That's why I would invite you all to be in there.
And it's probably safer to listen to in the car than to be on Zooms and webcasts while you're driving.
True, but I will tell you, it is insanely addictive. So, pro tip: do yourself
Okay.
a favor, fire up that screen time app on your phone, give yourself a daily limit, and cut yourself off because wow, it does not stop.
That's amazing. So if you're in this app, and again, I haven't had a chance to really play with it.
Yeah,
It's basically a lot of folks who join a particular group or club. You use audio to have conversations.
yep.
How do the people who are in this club not talk over each other if there's 20, 30 people all chiming into a conversation?
That's a good one. So there's a lot of etiquette on there. So
Okay.
you look at the moderators, you look at the stage. I find personally when I'm running rooms and clubs, I try to keep the stage at a maximum of 15 because
Okay.
you run the risk of having way too much crosstalk. Also, when you're invited to the stage, a lot of people don't realize like you start off not on mute. So a good moderator is watching to make sure you mute the person and you should be
Mm.
going in the order. So a lot of times you will hear PTR in the app, which stands for pull to refresh, meaning
Okay.
you're looking at the order. So the common etiquette is to go in the order of the room, moderators first, and then the speakers. And a lot of times, sometimes imagine like stage diving, but literally onto the stage. So sometimes people are just gonna be like, blah, 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 buy Bitcoin, pitch, blah, blah, blah. And like that might be a good way to like tell them to get out. And also, sometimes when people say their thing, have their question, have it answered, it's okay to move them back to the audience to just make sure that there's room for all. And also, right now, at the time of this recording, rooms cap out at 5,000 people.
Oh my God, 5,000
And
people.
they do too. When Elon Musk was on, he completely destroyed that.
He crashed the internet, basically crashed the
Oh, yeah,
internet.
it was out of control. Yes.
That's amazing. So everybody who's listening, if you have an iPhone, ask around, get an invite, check it out, kick the tires. It sounds like it could be the next big thing. I don't know that you have to skip TikTok entirely. There's still a lot of audiences that do like video, and it is creative and it's still fun. We haven't figured out how we want to use it, with our brand yet, but we know we need to have a presence there, even if it's just sharing something once in a while. But Clubhouse it's more interactive. It gives you a podium that you can use to share and voice opinions and collaborate with other experts. I think we have a lot more we're going to learn from Clubhouse as it continues to expand and hopefully go to Android if they're listening to this and being a little prejudiced against us Pixel users and PC users. Give us Android users a chance. We want into. But yeah, I'm excited to see kind of where it goes. And for you, what's next for you on the horizon this year, aside from continuing your chaos list and sort of weathering the storm? What's on the agenda for Brian Wallace?
Man, I think that chaos list is really a thing, but I feel like this is my year as we're going to into our 15th year of business of clarity. Last year
Okay.
in August, I really got very intentional. I've shown you our capabilities deck. So I've
Yeah.
really been just focusing bit by bit just to really stand out at our key strengths as opposed to saying, oh, we're sort of SEO, we're sort of this and this and that, just not holding back and
Right.
just really leaning into that. And I feel like there's been a lot of clarity and refinement. And a lot of people have noticed, like a lot of people are like, wow, you're really showing up different this year. Wow, you're really taking it on and this and that. And I see you're over here. I think something and I'll leave you with this. I feel like a lot of us as marketers, we try a thing, right? We try SEO, we try Google ads, we try Facebook ads. And I feel like a lot of businesses get stuck doing one thing. And I think if we think of a diamond sparkles because it has facets. I think when you focus on all of the internals and all of the digital transformation, all the externals in the world, when you figure out how to put all those things together in alignment, that's when you sparkle and shine, as opposed to let me just lose my mind on Clubhouse, right? That's part of why I have a time restriction on it, because otherwise nothing would ever get done.
Makes total sense. Well, Brian, this has been super incredible. Thank you so much for taking time today to hang out with us and to help other marketers understand a little bit more about what they could be doing with digital media, with graphics, hopefully encouraging them to try out Clubhouse. And if someone wanted to work with you, what's the best way they could get a hold of you?
Sure. Just reach out to nowsourcing.com. And I spend a lot of my social time, obviously, on Clubhouse, but also LinkedIn. So find me out there at NowSourcing.
Awesome. Guys, it's been another episode of Unbottleneck. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next show.